We are continuing with our discussion of laws of Pesach and the Chayei Adam. We're picking up with Halacha Ches, discussing now what we need in order to properly perform B'dikas Chametz. So we learned that it's really important to do it in order to make sure that we are demonstrating that the bittul that we eventually will do, the nullification of the Chametz, is being done wholeheartedly. So we're going to talk about how you do it. So the proper way to do it is to make sure that you have a candle that is a wax candle and it's a singular wick. You cannot take two woven wicks together or two woven candles together like a Havdalah candle, because then that's a torch, and torches are not acceptable for checking, because one would become concerned to put that torch into these little nooks and crannies and into these little holes everywhere that you might set fire to the house. And also you shouldn't use something that drips, things like fat or oil, because then it's going to drip on things and it's going to ruin them, so you won't look properly again either. And even if you did use these things, you have to do the b'dika again, because the Gemara itself says one should not check with them, and therefore checking with them is not allowed. However, with other types of candles, even if they're not made from wax, is okay, as long as they are not of those things that say not to check with them. And the main thing is that as long as it's not like a torch, that would be acceptable. What's coming to say is that it shouldn't be like oil or like a torch, which should be so big. And common practice is also to possibly use that one could use a flashlight, would also be bidyev, would be okay. And the Mishra brings down that other people hold that if it's a more solid oil, that would be okay, but it's liquid oil was the thing that they're worried about. Next one is number 9, tests over here. You should check all of the parts of the house where you may have brought chametz in during the year at some point. And that is even a place where you normally would store jugs of wine or mead. You have to check there as well, because people sometimes go down there, such as the servers would go down there during the meal, and they are holding bread in their hands, and they're going to drop pieces of bread all over the place. And any place where you might be concerned that someone will enter during mealtime, you have to check them as well. And even if it's the place that you store things to cook with, such as specifically he mentions here, the wood to cook with, but if you went into the shed, let's say, to get more coals for your barbecue, same idea. So too in places where little kids could bring food, like in shul and in the Beis Medrash, those are all places we have to check as well. Yud, number 10. Therefore, you have to check all homes and all upper levels. And so too, the types of holes, the small holes that we mentioned previously, those nooks and crannies that aren't so far away that you couldn't normally reach them. So within normal reach over your head, and then below, it wouldn't count to go below 3 tefachim, 3 handbreadths, so something lower than about 10 inches from the floor. Because you don't have to check something that low, but people don't use that there, don't use that spot. And because if they're too high and too low, if people aren't going to use it, you therefore don't have to check it. And so too, children wouldn't get there as well. Okay, but if the children could get there, if it's like really low to the ground, then you would have to check to see if they're dropping things in there. One should also have to check underneath all couches and underneath all tables when you eat on them. And especially when you have animals around, like chickens, you don't have to check the ground where they live in their little coops and so on, because we can assume they ate everything, unless you know for a fact that you put chametz there. Then you have to double check to make sure they ate all the chametz. So what we were allowing you to rely on an assumption is if you're not sure if there was chametz there. But if you fed them chametz recently, you have to make sure it's all gone. And so too, when it comes to ducks, if you put the chametz out there in their food bowl, you have to make sure all of it is gone, because usually people put barley and oats to feed their ducks. And when you see that they've eaten all of it, that's fine. But you also have to make sure that anything else that would have fallen out of their trough or out of their bowl is also gone as well. Especially because they can't get outside of their coop if it falls outside of there. And those things are a concern because they are considered, those kernels that are wet for duck feed are considered chametz. And so too with any type of animal feed. I'm adding that as a comment on the side. And you also have to check all utensils that are cooked in which you cook all year long to see if there's any pieces of flour stuck to them and clean them out very well. And so to mixing bowls, you have to make sure there's no chametz stuck to them, especially ones that are made of wood where it can get into little cracks in the wood. And so it has to be checked well, and you have to insert something into the little cracks in order to get it out, because just a simple wash and a simple scrub is not going to work for that. You have to make sure that it's completely clear. And so too, any baskets that hold bread also have to be checked. So you can either take those baskets that hold bread and give them to a non-Jew as a gift, sell them to the non-Jew when you sell your chametz, or you can cover them with pitch one more time to make sure you cover up all the chametz inside of them. Yud Aleph. If you do the b'dikas chametz on the night of the 13th by your candlelight, that b'diavad you will fulfill the obligation. However, it's important that if you're still around to check on the 14th, you should check the night of the 14th as well. At least one other room in that home, because the rabbis made the takana for that day. They made the enactment for the day. You should do it, but don't make a bracha. However, if you are sweeping your house and you're looking around for chametz on the 13th day, you still need to go ahead and check on the 14th anyway, because you didn't check with a candle. So the main thing is to say the mitzvah is done on the 14th and with a candle. Mishnah Berurah adds that if you checked your house during the daytime for chametz, and you were using a candle, you would check at night without a bracha. So make sure you don't use a candle and don't have in mind to fulfill that obligation. And so before they do the actual badika itself, for the actual search, this is Yud Beis, this is 12, you should not begin your full search, without sweeping everything up. So the custom has developed to therefore take bird feathers and to scrub everything and to brush everything where chametz could have been found. You should also make sure to check the pockets of clothing, in the sleeves, anything where you could have every so often potentially put chametz in there. And you shouldn't say, no way I put chametz in there. Rather, you should assume that since you're not thinking about not putting chametz in there, you should check to see that you did put chametz in there. So check it. Because people think that, no, they just shake it a little bit. You really need to check your pockets. And that's because it could potentially be in there. Okay, now the Mishnah Berurah adds that when you do the b'dikas chametz, you should go ahead and check them again, because maybe you went ahead and put chametz inside of it when you went and checked them. So if you don't remember that you checked them, you have to check them again as part of your obligation for b'dika. But if you check them and you mark down that you've checked them, you don't have to check them another time unless you want to during the night of the b'dika. Let's do a few more. Okay, so we'll do Yud Gimel 13. So even though it says Lo Yireh Chas Chametz, don't see any chametz, which seems that it sounds like you have to see it, and the problem is seeing it. The rabbis understood that when it says Shiva Samin Lo Yimatzeh, that when it says you should not have found in your possession, it means that you also cannot hide your chametz or to put it in some other house. Because since you know where it is, therefore it's considered available to you and you're violating the law. So it's not in your home, but still in your possession, you could access it. Therefore, chametz that has been buried by a fallen wall or something else like that, if it is shorter, the mound is shorter than 3 tefachim, shorter than 10 inches, you must look underneath for chametz that you know about and destroy it. And if it has a pile on it that is higher than 3 tefachim from the ground, higher than 10 inches from the ground, even though if you know there's chametz there, you don't have to check. Why? Because it's such a big mound, it's considered destroyed. Nonetheless, you have to do the bittul and have it in mind. You have to make nullification, a verbal nullification. But some people say that this bittul is required by the Torah mandate, and if not, even though you have no intention of ever moving this mound, especially not during the holiday, nonetheless, it's still a problem of lo yimatzeh. You still own it, and so therefore the Torah requires you to enact a bittul, to verbally state you own nothing that's under this mound. Some people say that no, that's not a Torah prohibition on this, because it's only when you intentionally put it there. That's Torah prohibits it. But here, where it fell on it, and you had no intention to do that, and you're not ever going to access it, it's only a rabbinic prohibition, which is to say you need to do bittul. But you know you're not going to access it during the holiday at all. As such, if you didn't make bittul until after 1/2 of the day on Erev Pesach, you have to go uncover all of the stones and burn the chametz with a fire. And after Pesach, whether or not you could benefit from it is also going to be a dispute between these same poskim, the same decisors. And if it's such a large mound that falls on it, or a large wall that falls on it, creates a huge mound that you just aren't ever going to move it, it's considered impossible to access by any person. Then according to everybody, it's mutter, and we can't say that it belongs to you because it's so totally destroyed. Now, to go ahead and intentionally create a mound on top of chametz, such as if you have let's say you have a whole storehouse full of wheat kernels, and you know that you have some wheat kernels that have become fermented as a result of the moisture in the hole there, and now you want to put more wheat on top of it. Okay, even if it's the beginning of the year, you still have to get rid of the chametz that's in there because you know that it's there, and you are intentionally burying it. And this is lo yimatzeh. And even if you have no intention to take the wheat out of this wheat storage facility, even during Pesach, so we're just telling you that you really should be doing it to remove the fermented seeds from there. But after the fact, okay, or you forgot about it and you left these fermented kernels there throughout the holiday of Pesach. If it was more than 30 days before Pesach that you covered them up in the pile of wheat kernels, then you don't have to go dig them up and burn them. You can just do a bittul, and that will suffice. Okay? You could also sell them, but he doesn't mention that here as an option. And after Pesach, when you go ahead and take all the wheat kernels out, those kernels that are on the bottom, you can't benefit from them because you know that they were chametz all Pesach long. Because you didn't sell them, you left them there and you did a bittul on them. So since you knew that you had chametz there all along, as we said before, in order for it to be a full and complete bittul, a full and complete nullification, you have to say, I'm going to get rid of it. So therefore, when you go ahead and empty out all of the wheat kernels from this storage facility, the fermented ones must be destroyed. Okay, and that's even worse than the case that we had before, where the wall falls down and creates a mound over the chametz, even within 30 days there, because in that case, you would have to go ahead. Because in that case you could go ahead and leave it there because no one's going to access it. But here, people would access it, and if it's within 30 days and you left these kernels in there, you absolutely must go remove it because it's not considered bittul because you know you're going to access it. Okay, so that's different than a case of where the mound of rocks falls on it. Let's do one more. We're going to do number 15. Then we'll call an end to this class. So if you don't have chametz that you know about, just maybe there's chametz. If you're within 30 days of Pesach, then you have to check out of doubt before you go ahead and store your wheat in there. Okay, and you have to check in the night of the 14th, at the night with a candle. And if you don't check, you have to empty out the whole thing and look for it. Because within 30 days before Pesach, you have an obligation to get rid of chametz, and you've left these things in there. Now, before 30 days, if you know that you're going to empty out all the kernels before Pesach, you have to check, because you might not go ahead and empty out the whole thing beforehand, or you're not going to leave 3 tefachim on top of it, and then you're going to not get to the rest of it to check. Then you need to check. Okay? Now, if you are going to leave it there all through Pesach, and you're not sure of these kernels, then you don't have to check. Okay, we pick up next time with number 16. Let's go talk more about these 30-day requirements.